Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. If you're listening on Facebook, we do this every day. But Saturday and Sunday, we do it live on Facebook. Today, this is our podcast. It's called Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to our show. And welcome to Questions and Answers Day. That's the day we field questions from all the listeners. But if you want to join us live on Zoom, this is a whole little club we got going. We do this every morning. There's usually between 90, how many do we have now? 91. We usually between 91 and 110 or something like that every morning. And if you'd like to join that, you have to email us at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Once you get into Bhakti, you have to start putting 108 in all your addresses, passwords. That's just part of the rules. We'll teach you that as you join. And today, okay, that's all I have to say. Good morning, Kaustubha.
Good morning, Raghu.
Kaustubha's hardcore. Mara's not hardcore. Mara's our assistant. She's not hardcore. She doesn't even know what it means. And that's okay. We don't favor the hardcore.
All right.
But we do have some old school hardcore people.
We like the hardcore though.
Yeah, we like the hardcore. Greg DeGaso, I think, is hardcore. And Louis from Antidotes, he's hardcore. And Liam is hardcore.
Jiva.
Who? Eva?
Jiva.
Oh, Jiva is old school hardcore. I thought you said Eva. Eva's definitely not hardcore. All right. Well, let's dive in. Anything you guys got to say is Luke
Maharaj tomorrow.
We have a great interview day tomorrow with Satchidananda Maharaj. They're all in Germany. He's a German Swami, but we love him. He's an incredibly deep person. He's a prolific author. He's a he's sort of like one of those inspirational people in my life. Has been for years. I first met him when I first went to India in a holy place, and we bathed together in a sacred lake at midnight.
Was he on that Prikrama of Govardhan Hill where your feet got all torn up and you're...
No, that's a different funny story.
Okay.
This was the story of the appearance of Radhakund, which is coming up.
Yeah.
It's a holiday that comes up every year.
By the way, I shouldn't interrupt, but today's Kartik, right?
Today is the first day of Kartik. If anyone saw that moon last night, it was so bright last night, it was out of control. That moon represents the first day of the month.
No, I think that's tonight is the full moon.
You know, everyone argues a day and a day. And also we have to make this important point. So first of all, let's finish that statement. We keep on cutting our statements off.
Yeah.
I was bathing in a lake. We're going to go by two statements. I was bathing in a lake with this holy man, my first trip to India. It's a day where everybody bathes at once. The whole pilgrims come from all over, and it's just like this incredible kirtan, food, prasad, sacred food, singing, and then bathing at midnight. And it's cold. It's a little cold. And so anyway, the second thing which we interrupted ourselves was it's the Kartik, which is a holy month this month. And it's a great month to take a personal vow. It could be a lot. With my kids, I'm saying make it small. Make a small vow. It's supposed to be a month to increase your focus on sweet baby Krishna. Krishna in his form as a child. If you're new to the show and you're like, what does that mean? Just make a vow to improve your quality of your life. We'll keep it very simple for you. Make a simple vow to improve the quality of your life. If you're already gone through the Krishna threshold, it's the focus on sweet baby Krishna. Maybe a little bit more reading, a little bit more hearing, a little bit more chanting, something like that every day, and it has a tangible effect for the next 30 days. And finally, we move the clocks back tomorrow.
Oh, that's important. Yeah.
All back. So that means we gain an hour. I can't do the math, but I just want you to know.
You don't have to be here an hour
don't
earlier.
do that. They already did it. And we have international group here. So double check if you're going live tomorrow. All right. Anything else we want to say, Mara? Mara's thinking about stuff.
Bhakti recovery group today.
Yeah, there's a Bhakti recovery group meeting after this. I think it's at 9:30 today.
Eastern time.
Yep. And then Luke Carmen is not feeling well, so he had to cancel his yoga class today. Yoga.
Oh. Well, you see, we have a whole recovery. We have a Bhakti recovery group. We have yoga classes that go on. It's to support this podcast. This podcast is community supported. So if you want to support what we're doing, you like what we're doing, you give a monthly contribution, and it helps us feed our children. Go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. All right, we're going to start off with our questions today, and I'm going to dole one out to you, Kaustubha G.
All right.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is from, you can write your questions, the same email address, wisdomofthesages@gmail.com. wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. This is from Salish. Salish, oh, this is a good one. Salish from Pakistan. Being just a beginner in bhakti, knowing so very little and not being able to express myself clearly, my friends and I got into talking about the sense of incompleteness we all feel sometimes and relationships of this world. That's a good question already. We get a lot of people that listen from Pakistan.
A lot?
We get a few.
Okay.
I'm thinking one person from Pakistan is pretty amazing.
It's true.
There's a few. Okay. All right.
You can start over if you want.
Let me start over. Being just a beginner in bhakti and knowing so very little and not being able to express myself clearly, my friends and I got into talking about the sense of incompleteness we all feel sometimes and relationships of this world. So during the conversation, I tried to make a point of how relationships of this world are based on a bodily concept and how I've personally never seen any relationship not based on the selfish desire of extracting pleasure from the other person. Good point. We furthermore talked about the idea of love, and I made a point of how in today's age, love is mostly mixed with lust to some degree or another, and how if you actually love someone, you'll do your best to make them realize their relationship with Krishna and how they're complete in themselves and they don't even need me to complete them. Okay, so this person's definitely bought in to what we are talking about. They don't need me to complete them or to give them the bliss they're looking for. Having said that, a close friend of mine pointed out how I was reducing the essence of human relationships and their worth, and how harsh I was being towards the idea of relationships. Thus, my question, am I wrong for thinking like I do? Am I completely off track? Should I keep open the possibility that relationships can be pure? Thank you. That was a great question, huh?
I like that question.
I can see Salish totally like fanaticking out their friends. There's no love in the material world.
Yeah. And at the same time, I feel that Salish is actually like a sensitive person because I'm not sure if Salish is a male or female name.
I can't tell either.
Maybe someone could help.
I read it like a girl, and then I started halfway through. I was like, maybe it's a boy. I got to change.
Yeah. But you know, the fact that they, picked up on this and is asking this question is, shows that Salish isn't like totally out of touch, right? And so so Salish is asking, am I off in saying these things? Is it wrong? Did I get it wrong? Am I, misrepresenting these teachings? And I would say that there's nothing inaccurate with what you said. You mentioned that relationships of this world are based on a bodily concept. and that they involve selfish desire of extracting pleasure from another person. And you mentioned that, generally our love is mixed with lusts to some degree, or material desire to some degree. And that if we truly love someone, and if we really want to help them, then we want to try to help them realize that, ultimately they have a relationship with their own divine source, that we all share in common. And you'll find your completeness in that, and you're not trying to direct them to you to find that completeness. So like all that's good. But I think where the attention has to go here, because you said things that were, according to yoga philosophy, true, but what was the result? The result was that they're like, oh man, you're devaluing everything that's good in this world. You're like invalidating everything that's important and meaningful to me. You're telling me that my relationship with my family members, that it's totally invalid, and it's got no basis in anything that's good. It's just based on lust and some sort of material motive, and that's all there is to it. I don't like that philosophy. Where'd you come up with that? I know that I have genuine feelings of affection that are real for my loved ones, and you're telling me that I don't,
that are not based on lust.
Yeah, you tell me that I'm just as selfish to the core. So I think a lot of it has to do with there's a few things I could draw attention to here. One is that, well, let's first say that let's look at illusion as a disease, right? And that illusion is that I can find happiness through the material things in this world. I can find happiness through relationships that have no spiritual context, and so on. We would call that illusion. And then Bhagavatam and other yogic texts come through with medicine to help cure that disease. But how that, and you were administering, Salish was administering the medicine. But medicine has to be like, it's not like when we go to doctor, we need doctors. Otherwise, we could just have pharmacies, but you need someone that knows how to administer that medicine, right? You with me, Robert? Does that click with you?
Totally.
Okay. So yeah, it's not just that we just need medicine. We need to know how to apply that medicine, how to take that medicine. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the sensitivity comes into play. So we need guidance for how to take the medicine. If the medicine is too bitter, no one's ever going to take it, right? So you might have to figure out how to present it in such a way where someone says, oh, okay. That, if I say all relationships in this world are materialistic and there's no true love in this world, that's too bitter a pill to swallow, But there's other ways to express the truth or to rephrase things, And another idea that we need to consider is that two medicines may both be valid, but they do the exact opposite.
Sure. That's a good one. Because we tell it to Salish, she's like, yes, that's right. The material world is filled with like bitter relationships. I've had bitter relationships. Everybody just wants something from me. But someone else might have very, very sattvic relationships where it's nuanced. We tend to lean towards this binary thinking. It's everybody's trying to take something from me. They want me for my body or for my wealth or for my charm, whatever it is, or
Yes.
It's just like maybe it's or it's sort of like it's all, there's no agenda behind relationships. But the world is nuanced.
My point was this, though. I appreciate everything you just said, but this was my point: is that there are certain medicines that heat the body. There's certain medicines that cool the body, right?
Well, we're talking about Ayurvedic medicine, people. So there's heating medicines and cooling medicines.
Well, even in all
I don't think in allopathic they think like, oh yeah, try aspirin, it's cooling.
Well, no, but there's like,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but we talk about, when you talk about cooling medicine, no one talks like that except people in Ayurveda.
Certainly we see doctors need to cool a body down sometimes, or they need to heat it up sometimes, right? Or a doctor will give you advice.
You know what? I shouldn't have said anything. It's just that it's one of those Hare Krishna things.
It's not. That's my point, though.
Have some milk. It's heating.
Doctor will say, rub some Vicks. They used to do it when we were kids, right? Rub this Vicks on your chest, and then you keep it warm, or different things like that. So sometimes a doctor's going to instruct you
Okay.
to stay
All right.
warm.
There are cooling medicines and
Sometimes the
heating
doctor's going to
medicines.
instruct you to
Sorry.
stay cool. Yeah.
Okay.
But my point is that for different people, we'll need a different medicine. Here's an example, and it's related to what Salisha's saying. There's sometimes you can hear Srila Prabhupada say, there's no love in this material world. There's none, right? And there are other times where, like, and I think I shared this example once before, where he saw just two little kittens rolling around on the ground. And he said, look, even here, there is love. All right.
It's like a Zen cone. Is there love or is there not love?
So it must mean that he's using the term love in different ways.
Yeah.
On one hand, he's using it to describe prema, the divine love of the spiritual realm, which is entirely free of even a tinge of material motive. And in the material realm, we can use the word love in another way, which means, a deep affection that one has for another. And so if you're trying to communicate to a person that within this realm, that absolutely pure love doesn't exist, but they're hearing that I don't have any true affection for my loved ones and they don't have any for me. Well, now you've just created a dissonance that nobody wants to deal with, and it's not going to help them. So it's like they say, the operation was successful, but the patient died.
Right.
You gave the right medicine, you did it, but they weren't able to benefit from it. There's a story that Prabhupada told, or maybe it was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I'm not sure, but about there was a veterinarian, so some type of veterinarian, and he had a apprentice, and he got a call from someone who had a horse that was, like, obviously very ill. It was lying on the ground. It had a huge swollen neck, and so the apprentice came out to see it. And the person's like, I don't know what's happened to the horse. It's lying there. It can't move. It's got this huge swollen neck. And the doctor just kind of looked at the horse, opened its mouth a little bit, looked in there, felt around. Then he reached into his bag and he pulled out a big, like, mallet, right? And he just started pounding on the neck of the horse. Seemed unusual. And then the horse just jumped right up.
With this.
The horse, I got your attention. I can see that. The horse just jumped right up. And it was fine. And so then, not long after that, the apprentice branched off on his own, although he really wasn't qualified to yet. And someone called, and they had a sick horse. The horse was lying on the ground. He just took out a hammer and started beating the hammer on the horse. And the people, what the hell are you doing? What? And he actually killed the horse. And, like, what kind of veterinarian are you? This is, like, terrible. So he said, well, this is the way I learned how to do it, So then they went back to that original veterinarian and says, you fool, don't you understand? That horse had swallowed a watermelon. It had it stuck in its throat. I just needed to break up that melon so that it could, and then it was better. But you can't just beat on any horse that way.
Wasn't a real story. But that was good. That's an analogy. Okay, I was thinking he really beat a horse with the assistant. Yeah.
Sorry to disappoint.
I get it. So you're different strokes, different ways to explain things to different people.
That's right. So here's a couple tips. Here's a couple tips. That sometimes you need to phrase things gently and be careful about using absolutes. There is no love in this world. It's like you're asking to be misunderstood.
That's what I told my mom when I got back from India the first time. You're not my mom.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't work.
So, but if you would have phrased it in a different way, saying, like, of course you're my mother, but in another sense, you're not. Let's think about it. So you have to be careful how you phrase things if you want someone to understand what you're saying. Rather than saying there is no love in this world, you can say the love of this world. If you think deeply about it, you can see it's always mixed, at least a little. Commonly, what we call love is entirely selfish. And even the purest love of this world, that is said in these ancient texts, that there's something even more pure, more divine, and beyond this that we're unaware of. Now you can have a conversation, and also try to, when you're trying to help someone understand this philosophy, a lot of times it's really important that you don't come off as I'm the doctor and you're the ill patient and I'm giving you the medicine and you're going to need this, but rather that you help them see how you're taking the medicine. In other words, you share with them your own contemplations and your own struggles and how you're applying this in your own life, rather than forcing them to apply it in their life.
That's a big one.
Right.
If you can put it in your own terms and going through your own struggles, It takes
So
people off that guard of feeling preached to or that you're below them, and you just
exactly.
share what you're going through.
So like if Salish, rather than saying there's no love in this material world and this and that, if Salish would said, you know what, I look into my own heart and I see that what I call my own love is often not entirely pure. You know, if it's coming from that angle, then people might say, oh well, let me think about myself too. You know, but when it comes in a condescending way, it can be a hard pill to swallow. Okay, and I'll just leave it there. I hope that was helpful, Salish.
I think that was helpful.
Okay,
I think those are good questions.
I
That was
think
my
it's a great
ninth
question.
grade. That was my ninth grade epiphany. You know,
What's
like
that?
I love her. She's so beautiful. And then I'd think to myself, wait a second, would I love her if she had one ear?
I remember you
Would I
saying
love her? Right? I think it's a good one. It's a good way to think like that, especially teenage boys or whatever. Would you love her with one ear? Would you love that? And you start like taking away limbs
One
of the
ear.
body. Would you love?
One
and then
ear,
what are
maybe.
you actually loving? And then you say, well, because love, I think what it did for me was to make things, am I just falling in love with the body or am I falling in love with a being? And then you got to start to think like, what else, well, what is love then? I think that was an important ninth grade epiphany for me.
That's how Raghunath discovered what love is. He went on to share it.
I want to know what love is.
I want you to show me, Raghunath.
What is
You
that
ready?
song? What is that song?
I want you to show. Who sings it?
No, what is it? What's the lyrics? Did I say that right?
I want to know what love is. I want you to show me.
Oh, I want you to show me. Mara sent me a private message
Don't sing anymore.
in WhatsApp.
Okay.
No, she said, please sing more. You have a great voice. No, it wasn't. It said, can you adjust your camera? Your head's being chopped off.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
You know, I thought my forehead was a little big. So I'm hoping to chop it, make it a little more rounded.
All right. We got a
Okay, what
question
you got for me, Kaustubha? Hit me.
This come from an anonymous listener via email.
Anonymous.
This was sincere. I like this question. It's so just straightforward and honest and vulnerable. Vulnerable. You ready?
Yep.
I am following your podcast and have been with you on Zoom a few times too, but I confess that I am so far from being a true yogi. Well, you know what? When you say that, I think maybe you're closer than you think, right?
I know. Means they're a little bit honest and
Yeah, you know, humility is what being a true yogi is all about. I'm so far from being a true yogi. I'm not straight edge. For those that aren't hardcore.
don't drink, don't smoke, vegetarian or vegan.
So on some level, they're engaged in that. And I have so much trouble getting there, making up my mind, being committed. But my body is really suffering, and so is my mind for that matter. I don't have the first clue on how to become devoted, but I've been searching. I need help with quitting caffeine, wine on the weekend, and ceasing to eat meat. I don't even know the Bhakti diet or how I will incorporate it into my life. Where do I start? I was vegetarian for 5 or 6 years in my 20s, but I stopped due to peer pressure, which ironically is also when yoga became prominent in my life. Now I'm 42 and well, I'm just struggling. Can you advise me in any way?
Good question, Anonymous. I think that culture just lowers the bar repeatedly. And according to like the communities you hang out with, they're going to hold the bar at different places and they're going to say what normal is. And I think we have to sort of rewrite our normal. And it's hard when everybody else is around you doing one certain thing. And I think it's important that we finally start to realize here's what I want to become. And here's what I want to do. And this is just going to be me. There has to be a time in a person's life where they just make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know, like incision. It's like a cut where this is now what I am. And sometimes you see people who've been through incredible struggles and they're successful and they seem connected and you talk to them and that you hear their backstory and it's like, you went through all that. How did you ever change? And it always starts with something like, well, at a certain point, Raghunath, I just decided, right? And that is sort of like I just decided, and people who do it with like weight loss or exercise or spirituality, or they just decide. And it sometimes takes a ton of determination, and sometimes it just takes a good community to sort of cushion them and lift them up. But it has to be this point where we just make a decision. And sometimes I always say, well, just gradually let go of this or let go of that, or add more spirituality to your life, and eventually you won't want to do those things. But truthfully, it's all going to take a decision just to draw a line in the sand. I'm getting older, and now what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Sometimes we meditate on our temporality. We meditate on, hey, this can happen to, I could die at any minute. What am I doing with my life? Sometimes we know someone that dies, and that sort of gives us a wake-up call. Someone we love dies. But whatever it is, even that will only last a few days. We still have to get to this point of making a decision. We need that spiritual epiphany in our life. Like, I'm going on a bad track here, and I have to change. It's a Christmas Carol. It's like Scrooge on A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens. He's like, I can't do this. And sometimes we need to have that dream where the ghouls from hell take us to different planets or take us to different futures. We got to think it through. We got to think our whole life through if I keep going down this path. But I will say that, and I got this beautiful message yesterday from, Carla the coach. She says, Carla the coach said, I'm different this year just from listening to the show on a regular basis. So I'm saying that not because, this is such a great podcast because of me. It's because we're discussing transcendental subject matter on a regular basis, and it affects us.
Yeah.
And I was saying, I'm different also. So what's the difference? We just decided to do it one day. And then and the listeners decided to listen every day. And then we decided I'm going to get on Zoom every morning and do it. And in that decision, we change. It's little increments on a regular basis. And that's what we're doing in this month of Kartik. We're going to make a little change. We're not even saying make a massive change. Make a little change. Add something to your life that's going to upgrade your spirituality. We're all at different places. That's okay. So things like for this person, I don't know why I think it's a lady, but this anonymous person, but yeah, get things like alcohol and meat eating out of your life. Just take them out of your life. It's over. Just bury that. I'm not going to do it anymore. And just make that decision. We're already, especially if you already know you don't want to be that person, then just cut it. And then from there, add.
Maybe a Bhakti recovery group is for this person.
Yeah. Nancy Rothman's like, send them my way. Yeah, we have lots of stuff going on our Patreon program, and this is what this whole community is about. It's how to upgrade and have a community that just wants to raise the bar a little. And I tell you this in all honesty, it's for me as well as you. If you feel like you're getting something out of it, I'm getting something out of it. I'm getting something by getting these annoying text messages from Mara that say, "Is it Sweet Baby Krishna tonight? You want to do Sweet Baby Krishna?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, all right."
That's her so taking up responsibility there.
I know. You know what it is? She likes Sweet Baby Krishna, and she likes to hear. And I'm like trying to like juggle my life, and I get this text message, and I feel responsible, and I do it. And you know what? Every time I do it, I'm like, thank God I did that. Thank God for that text message.
Do you say thank you, Mara?
Thank you, Mara. And so it's one of those things. It's in the same way there's this positive peer pressure, like, oh, come on, just eat a steak. It's good for you. What are you, a bird just eating seeds and berries? There's a positive peer pressure. So Mara's giving me that positive peer pressure. That's what we need in our life.
Look at Mara today. She's like all bundled up in some special kind of outfit there.
Like, there's a whole beautiful snowy thing happening in Columbia County right now. It's gorgeous outside. Everything's covered with snow. My sheep are walking around lost, whereas there's nothing to eat. They've decided to eat all my jack-o'-lanterns. And that's where I'm at today.
Her setup looks like some kind of special multi-layer kind of winter system.
You know why? Because in New York, you don't even notice the cold because the apartments, those old apartments, are always like at 110 degrees. You got to open the windows in the winter. You know the deal. Okay, let's carry on. Carry on my wayward son. There'll be peace when you are. Sorry. Sometimes these are just stored. They're just stored,
Obviously.
waiting to come out. My wife did a 70s trivia, TV show trivia. She couldn't believe how many I got. I got them all.
She was
Man.
disappointed how well you did.
I did incredible. I didn't have that training as a young devotee that some of our listeners who grew up in Bhakti have. Their brains are fortified with spirituality. I grew up on 70s television shows. Okay. Holly and music. Holly Thomas, she's an other. An other, if you're new to this, an other is those, I guess if you're listening on Facebook, you're an other also. We gotta think a name for them. Others mean they're not here live. But sometimes others listen every day because we don't see them.
Most people are others that listen every day.
Yeah, most people are others. Okay, she says,
First of all,
that was funny.
it's a number.
First of all, I understand giving up the sense pleasures and how this can be beneficial. But what's the point of this human experience and sense gratification availability if we shouldn't immerse into it sometimes? Or in other words, what's the point of having these senses that are given to us if we don't get to use them? It's a good question. Couldn't some say the simple smell of a lemon bush is sense pleasure? Doing the japa rounds is pleasure to some. Where do we begin and end with what is acceptable pleasure and unacceptable pleasure? Is it the moderation, or do we need for the use to get happy, or the need for use to get happy or content in life? An hour of Netflix, an hour of marijuana, an hour of smelling lemon bushes, an hour of Bhagavatam, an hour of japa,
There's
an
a
hour of
schedule right there.
asanas. This sounds like it's coming from Mr. or Mrs. Moderation. Most of the time, I enjoy asanas more than Netflix, and sometimes more than these classes. Some people enjoy the marijuana, and I enjoy growing and the smell of these lemon bushes and spreading them in my yard to various places and getting them to take off in new locations.
Like little babies.
Like little babies. Okay. What's the difference of all these in sense gratification when they all take our time? They are all helping us out of the current moment we are currently in. So they say, yeah, this helps you, it gives you a little way to step out of yourself. Thank you all again. Also, thank you, Raghunath, for showing up on Joe Rogan. Hard to tell how long it would have taken me to find you guys, or how long I would have had to binge listen to the podcast if my husband wouldn't have played that episode for me that day.
Wow.
Well, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
Comes
Joe
through.
Rogan again, inspiring bhakti in people's lives. That day I thought, this guy, who does he think he is? And
Who
with
does
that,
he think he is?
and with that, I was still totally drawn to the podcast and interested in why you were the way you were on that show. Thank you. Who does he think he is?
Still, I'm intrigued.
Still, I'm intrigued by this mysterious man. This arrogant, pompous mystery.
It's a mystery.
Yeah, it's a good question. Why
Okay.
can't we just balance it off? Why are you so extreme? This
Okay.
is-
Well, I'm going to tell you right now. Okay, right off the bat. You ready, Raghu?
yeah.
And what was that? Holly. The issue is not if any pleasure is experienced through the senses, it's evil and it must be stopped. That's not what's coming through the yoga tradition. It's more like that the strategy that you're going to find lasting and meaningful happiness through the senses, that's a mistaken philosophy, and that one comes to that strategy through the influence of illusion, right? So the idea is that we're walking around with a confused idea that we're going to find deep meaning in life through the senses. We might find burst of pleasure, but we're not going to find deep meaning. Now, that doesn't mean that experiencing the pleasure through the senses is wrong, but what's wrong is thinking that this is my strategy to find happiness in life, right?
Well put.
And then beyond that, that the more that we engage with that strategy, the more we lose touch with reality. And therefore, gaining control of the senses is an important thing to do, and that's an important part of yoga, right? So, to help understand this, we can go back to that virtual reality analogy, right? That if we took Raghu and we plugged him into virtual reality where he had goggles on and headphones and all that stuff, and but it's so realistic that he's accepted it as real, right? He's trying to get some enjoyment out of it. So he's all locked in, and it's so realistic that Raghunath thinks this is real, and he's got his sources of enjoyment that he's trying to find there. But it's even programmed into that they're all temporary, and he can't get anything lasting from it. So he's in a state of frustration where he's getting some enjoyment, but he's still frustrated. He's getting some enjoyment, but then he gets fear. He's getting some enjoyment, then he gets pain. He's locked in because the virtual reality is designed that way, right? Because it's designed that way. Now Mara comes into the virtual reality, right, in her own avatar, and she explains to Raghunath, there's a reality beyond this virtual reality. That's the truth. That's the real world, and there your happiness can be unlimited, because what you're trying to do is all virtual pleasure, and by nature the virtual pleasure has a beginning and an end. It has its ups and its downs, but there's a realm beyond that where you can find reality, and that's a level of deep, meaningful, real happiness. And then she managed to convince you, so okay, I buy into it. I want to get there. But here was the thing, that there was no getting out until Raghunath became 100% convinced of this, to the very core, to the point where he really had no material desire anymore, right? And what he found was that the more that he engages with the virtual world, his virtual bed, his virtual food, his virtual, whatever he's getting in that virtual world, the more that he engages with it, the more that he forgets about the reality that's beyond it, right? So he's got to control how he engages with the things in that virtual world. Now, certain paths of yoga would say you cut it off entirely. You give up all the material pleasures. Any pleasure coming through the senses, you're going to annihilate. Even you're going to go the opposite direction and take up austerities in life, just to detach yourself from everything in that virtual reality. That's one strategy Raghunath could use, right? You with me, Raghunath? I'm bored, Raghunath. He's totally like, I don't know.
I'm listening. I'm looking this way because on my computer screen, you're over to the far left.
Okay, but I asked you a question and you didn't respond, so I thought maybe
that is one way. You cut off all the senses.
Yeah. Okay, but Bhakti yoga is different. Bhakti's not like that. In Bhakti yoga, the idea is that it's not, and this goes right to the question that Holly was saying, like, I forget exactly what she said, but she said, like, where do you draw the line? It's like that kind of thing.
That's a good question.
Yeah. And the idea is this, that what the philosophy of the Srimad Bhagavatam says is that in the pleasure that we derive through the senses is not a problem in itself. The problem is when we're trying to do it disconnected from the root of our existence. When we're trying to enjoy the senses in forgetfulness of God, then it draws us deeper into the illusion. Mm. But if we're acting in a way that we're remembering God, then there's no limit to the sense gratification that we can enjoy, right? So therefore you take and this is a very fundamental, this is why offering one's food is such a fundamental part of Bhakti yoga, that the act of purchasing, preparing, and offering one's food is a way of taking that most fundamental source of enjoyment and turning it into an act of devotion, right? And then the entire process becomes, it frees one from illusion, because the whole process of that, of buying the ingredients, of preparing the offering, of making the offering, and then of eating it in remembrance of God, that entire thing moves you to God, even though it's totally enjoying to the senses, totally pleasurable to the senses. So I thought I'd just read a couple of things that Srila Prabhupada wrote. Just a couple of short little things. This is one quote which Srila Prabhupada wrote. He said, "We should not be attached to things as they are, but we should try to understand that there is a relationship with Krishna. There's a relationship with God there. And as soon as there is relationship with Krishna, we shall properly utilize it. This is Krishna consciousness. As soon as we understand that there is relationship with Krishna, everything can be utilized for Krishna. Krishna is not a stereotyped, stagnant block."
Nice way to put it.
Right? Yeah. Krishna and Krishna consciousness is not stereotyped, stagnant block. It's not blocking anything here. It's not going to block you from enjoying food. It's not going to block you from enjoying things through your senses. Krishna is a dynamic force. Therefore, everything can be dovetailed in the service of Krishna. Simply one has to learn the art under proper guidance, how to utilize. Then that will be the perfect form of Krishna consciousness. Okay. And then I'll just read one more quick thing. He says, a diseased person cannot enjoy anything. He has to restrain his enjoyment in order to get rid of the disease. So that's like controlling the senses, right? I'm diseased with illusion. I got to control the senses. Similarly, our material condition is a diseased condition. If one wants to enjoy real sense enjoyment, then one must get free of the entanglement of material existence. In spiritual life, we can enjoy sense enjoyment which has no end. The difference between material and spiritual enjoyment is that material enjoyment is limited. Even if a man engages in material sex enjoyment, he cannot enjoy it for long. Right? It's pretty limited. But when the sex enjoyment is given up, then one can enter into spiritual life, which is unending. In the Bhagavatam 551, it is stated, Brahma Saukya, spiritual happiness is ananta, unending. Foolish creatures are enamored by the beauty of matter and think that the enjoyment it offers is real. But in actuality, it is not real enjoyment. It's in a virtual realm, which is limited, and suffering is tied right in with it.
Sure.
With the material enjoyment comes, because if that consciousness is turned away from our source, then with that enjoyment comes suffering. So yoga means, it doesn't necessarily mean denying the senses, but it means engaging them in a way that's reconnecting. And then whatever sense enjoyment one gets in that context is not only acceptable, it's conducive for spiritual life. And it leads to what the great yogis tell us is a state of pleasure that's unlimited, a state of happiness that's unlimited.
You know, Kaustubha, it's
Yeah.
also sort of the curse of being sattvic. The
Yeah.
curse of being sattvic is moderation doesn't hurt that bad. Like the punishment for moderation is not so bad as the punishment for a person who's rajasic and tamasic. So if you're very indulgent, like some of the 12-step people, when they read something like this, all their flags go up. No, 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 no. I have very firm lines in the sand of what I do and what I don't do because it's a slippery slope. I step one foot into that alcohol, drugs,
I'm gone.
other type of, and I'm going straight down. So this type of question, if a person's from a recovery group or had trouble or knows someone who had trouble with addiction, when you talk about drawing lines in the sand, they're like, yep, that's me. And when you talk to people who've never had that issue, who are, they're pretty moderate in the things that they do, then they'll that's when they give some pushback. What's the big deal? What's the big deal?
Well, you know, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's good.
Well, what I was going to say is that you brought up the word moderation. So I would say the word moderation is applicable here, but not the way that Holly's using it. Like, in other words, if you don't have too much of it, it's not going to be that big a deal. Well, that may even be true for a lot of people. Not everyone's an addict, and if they engage a little in something, they're going to go straight downhill. But I would say, but it's not a question of, if one wants a deep yoga practice, then I would say understand the word moderation like this. I'm going to moderate where my attention goes. I'm going to moderate my motive from being, this is for me separate from God, to tying everything into God, right? I need to turn that. So in other words, I want to enjoy music. Let me moderate it. Moderate how from going to music that makes me forget God and embrace a false idea of who I am.
I mean, there's what to speak of, Kaustubha, what to speak of really degrading. There's very degrading
Fair enough.
music. There's very degrading food. There's very degrading conversation.
Yes. On whatever level, that may be a little or maybe very deep.
Yeah.
But let me moderate. Like, I want to enjoy music. I can be listening to music that puts me in a state of illusion, forgetfulness of truth, embracing a false idea, false ego. Or I could listen to music that reminds me of God and it helps me embrace truth. And it's not that the music is less enjoyable. And it's not that it's wrong for me to enjoy that music. But now I've moderated my music listening from music that puts me deeper into illusion to music that reveals truth. And so that's where the moderation takes place. It's in tying everything in. It's not by giving things up. It's by tying everything in. I hope that's helpful.
I like that.
Okay.
I like that.
I hope that's helpful. If not, right back.
Yeah, right back and say that wasn't helpful. That wasn't helpful whatsoever.
It sucked.
It sucked.
All right. Okay, I got one for you from a dear friend and daily Zoomer. Okay, come from Nicole.
Which Nicole? Our
Schweiz.
Nicole?
From Schweiz.
From Schweiz? From the Confederate of Helvetica?
Okay. Here's the question. Last week, Kaustubha was talking about Brahma going through birth and death as well. Mm-hmm.
Brahma. So, okay. If you're new to that, Brahma, creator of the universe, 4 heads.
Yeah,
he does all the creation. And Kaustubha is saying that he also dies.
He dies.
He dies.
So she says, I was wondering if he and also all the demigods are aware of their temporary position and also being an eternal soul. Are they aware of that? Next question. Is it similar like when we hear the teachings of the Bhagavatam? I just read in the purport to 15:16, I assume that's the Gita, that the living entities are innumerable. Does this mean this cycle of 4 yugas up to the destruction of the material worlds will go on forever? And also, will some of the souls never go back to the spiritual world? And on top of that, or is this outside the possibility of understanding? And finally, also, is thinking about that taking me away from my spiritual path?
I think, good question, Nicole. I think it's important to ask those questions. And I think it's foolish to think that Raghunath is going to give an answer that is going to answer these questions. Like, is Brahma really Krishna conscious, or is Brahma an illusion? Or, I think that we can any of us can even debate about these things. How do we know? But I can say that and these are one of those things, like, I like to take it out of the realm of like the fantastic. Does Brahma or Indra, are they an illusion? Are they aware? What we can do is we can reference places in ancient stories, so many stories of Indra falling into illusion, so many stories of Brahma falling into illusion. I mean, he's Brahma, but they do get into Maya. So I think it's and then I also want to relate it to in my life. Brahma and Indra have very powerful positions, but they're also temporary, meaning they also will leave their body because they're jivas, they're spirit souls that have a body, like we are spirits that have a body. So are they. They also do things that are very connected to Lord Vishnu in service, and they also can fall into illusion. So all I can take this in my own life is that sometimes if I'm in a very powerful position, like a god, not that I'm ever like them, but there's sometimes where I feel like there's, good success in my life or good fortune in my life, where things are working out really wrinkle-free for me. Everything's going along great. At those times, it's very easy to forget. It's very easy to forget that, that the material world is a temporary place, that you can't hold on to anything here, that ultimately you're going to die and get disease. It's a place that has suffering in it. I'm not saying that should be our meditation all the time. We should live in misery, but there's a sobriety that comes with some pain in the material world. There's also an intoxication that comes with pain. So I don't know the answer to that one, truthfully, because I was just trying to think like, well, they're great souls and they have everything and they still fall into illusion. I think they're aware of their temporality, at least
Well,
from what I understand, because there's times where they pray, they have spiritual epiphanies, they see Krishna. Indra gets off his chariot, bows down to Krishna. Brahma bows down to Krishna. So again and again, these things are repeated in the Puranas. But sometimes you get wrapped up in all your stuff of the material world, and you forget. You forget that you're small and part of something bigger. So I think it's understandable that they can also, and I think this is why the human being on a planet like Earth, which is peppered with pain and pleasure, it's not all pleasurable. It's even the people that you know that have a great life and they're the most privileged. Sometimes the most privileged people suffer tremendously. They're all, and sometimes the people maybe not so privileged, they're connected and joyful inside. So I don't think anybody gets a pass from pain. And this earthly planet has a beautiful amount of both. And from that position, I can see, okay, what is the goal here? Is it just material enjoyment, or is it just like survival, or is it something spiritual? Is it something internal? And I think we're well positioned to make those choices. Perhaps if we had so much, we would just be intoxicated, like living in an ivory tower. Like Marie Antoinette, the peasants are hungry, let them eat cake. And we're just like intoxicated by our own wealth and opulence. And if we were in a very suffering condition, sometimes in a suffering condition, all I want is just survival. I have not so much time to think about spiritual things. I think we are in a very good position to take steps forward on our spiritual life. I don't know if I completely didn't answer that question whatsoever, but that is an answer to a question. It's an answer to a question, but it might not have been an answer to your question. What do you think, Mara? Did I answer that question there? Did I sidestep that and give a whole different answer to a different question?
What do you think, Kaustubha Ji?
I think you addressed the first part of it, but there's like about 4 or 5 questions in there.
Yeah,
But
the first part was like Raghunath will never know this.
with the first part.
You know what's funny is people who've been doing bhakti for a long time, they get caught up in there. There's so many different layers of Maya. Like the first layer of Maya is like, drinking this whiskey will make me feel good. That's like the simple, basic type of Maya. But as you practice bhakti for years, one big Maya that I always see is people have been like studying this stuff. They argue to the point of being nasty over things they will never know. Things like the gopis, the cowherd girls, Lord Brahma. There's Lord Brahma. You know. Don't argue like you know. You don't know. You'll not. You can't know. And you're going to quote this and reference this. It's like, stop being nasty. How about that? Maybe the lesson here is stop being nasty.
Everybody's being nice.
Not here. Not you guys. Okay. You nasty people. Stop asking these questions. No, but you see that. You know what I mean. Because
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. But I think, it just super briefly is that, we see like throughout Bhagavatam, like Brahma is generally like the voice of deep spiritual wisdom. Right? Well, for the most part.
He's a great soul.
But
even when he falls into
the head of our sampradaya, the pure knowledge, it descends through him. So certainly he knows that. But Bhagavatam sometimes shows these extreme cases to make a point. Even he can fall into illusion, and then they'll show him fall into illusion. Right? The Devas know a lot more than we know, but even they can be an illusion.
You should have just answered that question. That was the answer. The Devas know a lot more than we do, but even they can fall in illusion. That was the very simple.
What you said. You shared
what do we call that? We call that the quick startup guide. There's the thick manual, and then there's the quick startup guide. That was the quick startup guide answer for that.
Okay. Now you know who we got next now.
Harshal Gore.
Harshal Gore.
All right. I didn't even know. He's our go-to question guy on Saturday.
Yeah.
Harshal says he's from the UK.
Okay.
Why did Krishna never return to his loved ones?
Breaks my heart.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is.
I've been reading Krishna's Leela recently, and his story fascinates me. What surprised me is he never returns to the people he loved. Whether it was Devaki and Vasudev or Yashoda and Nanda, he also never returned to Vrindavan or Mathura. His parents were so desperate to see him, but he never went home. The most interesting relationship is with Radha. After killing Kamsa, he never returned to see her. This really surprises me. I'm not sure if this is true, but I believe Radha went to see Krishna in Kurukshetra, but saw him from afar and never approached him. The love between them both was so intense in their teenage life, but they never saw each other in adult life, and in the end, they married other people. This is so hard to fathom. Why did Krishna not return to his loved one? Was this a test for them and him? Was he giving up a lesson by keeping a distance? What a good question. It's sort of heartbreaking, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, this is, Harshal has taken it to the esoteric side of bhakti now, right?
Yeah, you have to get esoteric to answer this question.
Yeah, it can't be understood.
It's not a typical. You can't understand it like a love story, or else you're gonna be sad.
Yeah. Well, this is not your ordinary love story, too, right? But there's this goes back to our Dr. Frog thing in a sense. If we want to try to understand the totality of spiritual truth, we're not going to be very successful if we don't come in on a level like some of it may be hard to understand, and I'm going to have to accept that there's truth there that I'm not capable of experiencing. Now, there's a concept within bhakti. Well, let me put it this way. Within bhakti, there's paradoxes, how to put them from our vantage point. It seems like this can't be right. If Krishna loves Radha, then why doesn't he return to her? Right? It seems like on the material level, that's exactly what he would do. But we may not understand it on the spiritual level. Now, when you get, and we shared a key the other day, I think it was Thursday's show, where you said, here's a key for understanding the meaning of Krishna's pastimes, the meaning of Krishna's leelas, is that behind it, there'll be multi-levels of meaning, but at the very core of it, at the Tootsie Roll center of the Tootsie Pop, the meaning has to do with the intensification of the exchange of rasa, the exchange of love, right? And so when Krishna leaves Radha, and it's not just Krishna leaving Radha, Ram leaves Sita. Sri Chaitanya leaves his wife and mother. Krishna's always creating this separation with the ones that he has this very deep love with. Why? Why? It seems from the material external point of view, it seems like cold-hearted, but it's anything but. Right? It's anything but that. So the purpose is to intensify the love, and not just even like, oh, okay, I get it. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. It's even in the state of absence, the consciousness becomes so deep that it's actually the greatest pleasure, and therefore sometimes the material analogy used to understand it is dry ice. Dry ice, it cools things. At the same time you touch it, you get burned. So similarly, separation.
Good analogy. Dry ice. I'm going to keep that.
Dry ice. You can take it forever. Take it and run with it. So it seems that separation from one's loved one would be merely pain. And even externally, you see the gopis, they appear to be in pain. The residents of Vrindavan, they appear to be in pain. But we can't understand what they're actually experiencing. Now, there was a poet from Vrindavan named Nandadas, and he wrote, and this, think about this, you have to contemplate it. He says, there is more love in separation than in union. For in union, the beloved is found in one place only, while in separation, the beloved is found everywhere.
Say it again. Say it again.
There's more.
Whoa! Woo! What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again. Woo! Sorry, man. It's Saturday. That's what happens when I sleep in.
Okay. There is more love in separation than in union. For in union, the beloved is found in one place only, while in separation, The beloved is found everywhere. And we see that the gopis, they're running around this. They see Krishna here, they see Krishna, right? Now, I'm going to read a little from something that Raghunath Swami wrote on this topic, okay? On Lord Ram and separation from Sita, etc. He says, when we are together, the love of our heart goes out toward the beloved, right? The love in my heart goes out towards the beloved.
Yep.
In separation, that love goes deeper and deeper and deeper into the very core of our heart, and it is intensified. On the spiritual platform, love is not determined by our physical proximity. Our connection to God is to the degree that we are internally absorbed in thought of God. And when our love is intense, the Lord accepts it from within our heart. That love may be intense when the Lord stands before us, but it is even more intense when the Lord is not standing before us. When there's that longing, that deep, deep absorption, then the Lord is embracing us and reciprocating with us from within. And he says, and how God and goddess, male and female aspects, how they share the ecstasy of love for each other is not limited by our ability to comprehend it. So we may understand that theoretically. We may not understand that practically. But the fact that we can't doesn't limit it from being true. So certain things we have to hear descended, right? If we want to understand about the nature of the relationship between Krishna and Radha, you can apply logic only to a certain level. The rest you need to hear. You need to hear from authorities that understand it.
And here it is, Kaustubha. It's like Ram Leela, Krishna Leela. The same type of thing happens. It's the same, right? Yeah. On the surface, it's like, it's a little heartbreaking, and you have to go inside more. And this is where the masters come in that explain this stuff to us. So you can go much deeper than the surface of the book and read the transcendental cliff notes.
Okay. That was Harshal Gore's question for this week. Thank you, Harshal. And one last one for you. You ready, brother?
Last question? All right.
It's coming from Sham.
Onward on our transcendental Halloween.
Sham, coming from Sham Das from Wales, UK.
My mother, being Catholic, would never let any of us dress as devils on Halloween.
Okay.
And then my father would say, my father's famous quote was, "No devils in the house. The devil's real. If you call him, he will come."
No devils in the house. So what did you
I still say that, and my kids can't be devils.
And what did you dress up as?
Anything, but no devils.
Well, okay.
Anyone, the hobo.
We're gonna dig. Okay, the hobo.
You got to see my kid, my 6-year-old. He's Nacho Libre. It's so good. It is so good. My wife is really better than my mom was at costumes. We would just get the ones in the box with the string and the mask you can breathe through.
Superman.
Yeah, but my wife is taking this Halloween to new levels of design and art. Okay, go on.
Sham from Wales asks, I used to teach at a yoga studio where they would sometimes have quote unquote Bhakti-yoga weekends.
Ooh.
As if Bhakti-yoga was like a class you could attend, clock in and clock out kind of thing. With Bhakti being depicted as one of many quote unquote yoga styles nowadays, I'm trying to understand whether in the modern yoga world, we're confusing the momentary feeling of devotion and the actual lifestyle practice, lifelong career of Bhakti. If Bhakti means devotion, does that mean one can practice Bhakti to any chosen Ishtadeva? For example, someone might say they have Bhakti for Lord Shiva.
Right.
Can we have Bhakti for anyone and everyone, or is Bhakti only directed to the absolute truth, Krishna? Hope that makes sense.
Good question.
And your answer? Hey, look at that. He's thinking. He's like that when Johnny Carson would put on that turban and he'd be like, like that. Got his hand on his head up there like that.
No one knows who Johnny Carson is anymore.
Or he would hold the question up like that to his head, I think, right?
It's a great question. It's a great question. With First of all, the first idea of the Bhakti, come up to our Bhakti yoga class, then we're having a power yoga class, and then we're going to have ab hour yoga class, and then we're going to have, a handstand yoga class. Yeah, Bhakti is a lifestyle thing, but at the same time, I don't want to shout out, diss people who want to add Bhakti to their asana class and add a little bit more chanting or a little bit more philosophy. I sometimes think that's a nice thing of the person's.
You're not getting judgmental here.
I'm not getting judgmental on it. That being said, yeah, Bhakti is a lifestyle thing, and I think a lot of the yoga teachers on the show. I'm looking at Braja Sundari Radha right now, and Lori Pag right now, and there's a lot of great, Robin Shaver, and there's a lot of great yoga teachers here who practice Bhakti, and they add Bhakti to their class, and I bet their title is something like Bhakti Flow or something like that. Whatever. I think that's fine. But yeah, it's a lifestyle. But it's a lifestyle that, we're Americans. We got to sort of work it into our lifestyle. It's generally not an on-off switch. I'm Bhakti. I'm not Bhakti. It's generally we add certain amounts of Bhakti to our life, and it affects us in a deep way. So I think that's okay. I think that's okay to do. And the second half of that question, can you have Bhakti for other deities? In one sense, you'll hear stuff like that, but the very nature, for example, Bhakti for Shiva, you can have them as your Ista or your meditation, but very often it doesn't end with pure, as we describe Bhakti as pure love in service. For example, having Shiva as your Ista, the idea is to become God or to merge with God. So you can have your Ishta or your conception, your spiritual focus with another deity. But oftentimes even the other deities, Chandra, Chandi, so many different demigods that you worship, oftentimes they're worshipped for things, and they give things, they grant desires, they grant health, they grant strength, they grant fertility. So you can have them as your Ista. And sometimes people grow up in households in India where they actually have a family deity of a demigod. And that's just, and so they just inherit it by nature. Or sometimes it's even of an avatar of Vishnu that they particularly worship. So it's an understandable thing. But for it to give you this concept of pure love of God, you can worship them to get you there. Like we can worship Ganga, who's considered, they're all devotees in one sense, because they all work for the same boss. They're all emanating from Krishna. So you can pray to them to give you bhakti to Lord Vishnu. But to have pure bhakti for them is still disjointed, because you're not seeing yourself as part of the bigger picture. And this is one of those things that's, when you study the Vedic pantheon of deities and energy sources and the source of energy sources, it always goes back to Lord Vishnu or one of the manifestations of Vishnu. So my real connection is with the roots of the tree. Every leaf, they're connected to the other leaves, but only through the roots. So my real connection with my source is through the source. Now I might have a connection with my wife or my children or my dog, but ultimately all of us are connected to God. And I can have a more significant relationship with all of them if I'm connected to source. What do you think about that answer?
Love it. Love it.
Is that it?
That's it.
Is that it? All right. Well, that's our Saturday. We're going to have a great Kartik, because our month starts today. We encourage everybody to dive into that, make their little Kartik vratas, Kartik vows, and it's tomorrow. Halloween. Have a happy, safe Halloween.
And tomorrow?
No, today is Halloween. Isn't today's Halloween?
No, I'm saying tomorrow.
You're saying tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow. Tomorrow's Halloween, my kids.
Both days are Halloween. It's a double Halloween.
We're going for We're going for a hike. We're going for a hike.
But tomorrow we have Satchidananda Maharaj.
Oh, okay. And tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Don't miss that. Satchidananda Maharaj is going to be here.
Don't forget to change the clock.
And Johnny Mulligan is getting initiated today. He's getting a new name. I'm excited for that.
Johnny Mulligan?
I'm going to go see Johnny get initiated. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, all the Facebook people. Facebook people, you can join us every day and do this. It's not limited to the weekends for you. Come every day. Email Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and join our little club. We do this every morning, 5 a.m. You, too, can wake up early and hear me scream at the computer. And thank you. It's getting bigger and more exciting day by day. I'm very grateful for everybody here. You guys help me so much in my spiritual life. It's the small doses of a good thing on a regular basis. Very powerful way to turn your life around. So this may seem very, very peculiar. What we're going to do now is we're going to dance in a chair in front of our computer. Mara's going to work the dance cam, where she highlights somebody in the audience when they least expect it. Didn't they do this on, like, The Price is Right?
Oh, hold it.